I got all I want, and I got all I need, and I got everything. I got you and me. All I want, I got all I need.
All right, let's try this one out. Marriage is the best. Hey everybody, welcome back to the 6th or 7th episode of Marriage is the Best. We're talking a little bit about marriage and the holidays because Christmas is coming up, 2024. Here we go. I don't know about you, but the stress can be really tough around the holidays. And marital stress in particular can rise when families are getting together. Everybody has family stuff, family history, or, family struggles, family trauma. And facing families around the holidays is a great opportunity to work on a unity in your marriage. So if you're doing your 20-minute stress relieving conversations, this time can be used for talking through the details, expectations, fears, worries, or stress of getting together with the family. If you're not, then obviously, jumping back into those 20-minute conversations and making sure that you're creating a daily connection or a space for daily connection is going to be really helpful. So this is your reminder to get that done. Becca and I had a very stressful conversation around expectations just on our way to Thanksgiving, actually. It was not fun. We're running around like crazy, getting people ready. And then we're trying to get in the van. And we get in the van and I'm just feeling so distant. And so, there's this cold idea, right? Which is probably throughout the life of the podcast, we'll talk about that coldness because it's one of those things for me that triggers my frustration. It triggers me to feel disconnected. And when I'm feeling disconnected from her, then obviously there's a bit of frustration. So the coldness was there again. That's part of our dance, part of our system. And you probably have things in your marriage that are also part of your system that trigger, and then you kind of trigger each other back and forth. And so my trigger tends to be when I feel like Becca is being cold or distant. So that happened, and I wasn't, so then I engaged a conversation. We talked a little bit about it on the way there, but, it was really difficult. And she had a long laundry list of feelings that she didn't realize she wasn't really prepared to share. We were also like literally in the van with our 5 kids in the back, driving to, her mother's house. And so the context obviously is not an ideal kind of context for engaging in difficult, conflicting conversations. But we did dialogue a little bit about it. And in the moment, we did it really in a way that didn't resolve anything. We didn't come to a resolution just because I tried to talk to her about it for, the 40-minute drive. However, that hard conversation, that difficult conversation did open up the door to another conversation. So on our way back, the 40-minute drive back, we didn't talk a whole lot about it, but we did talk about how it went and how fun it was. And then when we got the kids to bed, that was when our follow-up was able to happen. So sometimes, these hard conversations happen in a series, and the first one, it doesn't always go well. And coming back to it, having the ability to return to it, to create a repair, being able to return to it oftentimes will help us in our relationship to kind of work the problem there like further. So obviously her emotions are different, her thoughts are different, her willingness is different to engage the second time. Same for me. And so we just have the next level of conversation, from the really difficult one on the way to Thanksgiving. So the door was opened. We were able to have an improved connection and dialogue about the first conversation, and I was able to kind of get my point across. I was able to feel a little bit more heard and understood than I did on the van on the way there. And then she was able to let me know, okay, so this is all the things that I was carrying in that moment. And that helped. I was able to kind of see her and understand where it was coming from and feel like she was being less cold. And, we were able to connect over the information that she was holding in, that she wasn't ready to share, that I wanted, so that we could feel, that we could repair. There we go. So that we could repair the connection. So having that hard conversation, opened the door to having the improved conversation and connection and in the series. And then, so I think that it's important, at least it has been in our lives, to discuss going into the holidays, to discuss our, expectations of each other, our approach and plan for engaging with our families. If there's any anxiety or worries, we've talked about that a lot in the past, where I'm worried about this or this dynamic, or this conversation wasn't fun last year. And we're able to just connect over the information surrounding holidays and how our families move through holidays. We have been through a lot of crazy holidays together. Just for the sake of an example, back during the COVID days, my mom actually got COVID and was hibernated. And by that, I mean she was intubated. And so she was gone. And she was gone over the holidays. She had been intubated for, I don't know, I think she was probably 30 days or 40 days or something like that. But it was horrible. A lot of us had gone and seen her while she was in that state and just tried to support and love her. But it was a really scary, really difficult season. And it brought out the absolute worst in the Christmas, probably my least favorite Christmas of all time. I got angry at someone and yelled at, one of my brothers, and we had all the wrong conversations and had all this conflict that I think, looking back now, really had a lot to do with the stress of the situation and the stress of our mother. And there's a lot of extra drinking on that Christmas, and that always kind of is hurtful and hard and difficult for Becca and I to move through that. But it was just a really difficult season, and we have had to have a bunch of different conversations. We had conversations prior to going. We had conversations while we were there, although very limited. And then we had lots of conversations thereafter. And, even the years after that kind of resonated with us, and we tried to kind of figure out, okay, what went wrong? And, why did I respond in that way? And why did you respond in that way? And so I guess the theme there is just communicating around each other's experiences and each other's perspectives on holidays and family in order to create a unified front as you move into going and engaging with your families. So obviously your families might be experiencing, trauma or huge amounts of stress or difficulty with medical issues, difficulty with, maybe you have a sibling that's acting out, or really just in a hard place, really struggling. Maybe just, maybe you don't get along with them. Maybe you feel really distant from your parents. Maybe there's stress involved in, planning or finances. There's always something, because life is so messy. And when Becca and I are at our best, we are just really plugged into the details of our lives and the lives of the people that we're going to be around or to be touching. And that way we stay on the page, we stay united, we minimize miscommunication, we minimize conflict between us because we're on the same page. And we have a much nicer, better time kind of moving through the holiday season. So, if you're facing any of that, I would really encourage you to, starting today, it's going to be Monday eventually here. Starting today, you've got, 10 days to have 10 20-minute conversations to prepare yourself for the upcoming holidays. And maybe you're listening to this not on Monday, and so maybe you only have 9 or 7 or 6 or 5, or maybe it's past the holiday, so then you have like 364 opportunities for these daily connections. But however much time you have, and whatever timetable you're actually listening to this, you have an opportunity to start setting the foundation for those conversations now. And if you can set the foundation for those conversations, that is going to open the door to further connection and further satisfaction and further intimacy. And that's really the purpose of spending 20 minutes every day making some kind of connection, whether you use one of the conversations that we talked about, whether you use, just like sitting down and doing something side by side, but doing something intentional and doing it consistently. If you're doing that, you're going to greatly increase your ability to, move through stressful things like the holidays. And the holidays can be extremely stressful. So starting today, commit to that, having that conversation, commit to having those, even hard conversations around the holidays. And those touch points can create opportunities for talking through the details of life that otherwise are going to create extraneous stress in your marriage. A scenario here, right? So if we go back to this really hard Christmas, and we love our families very much, and this Christmas was an exceptional Christmas, and not that the other ones are perfect, but we love them very much. This was just an extremely hard Christmas for everybody, I think. But if we hadn't talked about it going in, we would have been more stressed while we were there than we already were. And if we hadn't talked about it thereafter, kind of game planned and talked through like what went wrong and why did Peter respond so terribly in that situation, and how did Becca feel about maybe the drinking or some of the interactions that she had, and how did I feel about the interactions that I had, and what were we carrying into those, and how do we move through it? So we had a series of conversations about all of those things. But if we hadn't, then the next year, right, we are much less prepared for engaging in the holidays. We don't have an updated plan. We don't have an updated frame for each other, for how it has been, for what we need to avoid, and for the signals both in ourselves and in each other that say that the other person needs help, or the other person, is struggling. We miss a lot of those benefits by not having those conversations. And we create a lot of benefit when we're willing to engage in those. So the 20-minute, so I guess to wrap that up, the 20-minute conversation, connection point does open up the doors for knowing your partner and knowing their world and moving through difficult and stressful things more unified, and that unification, that those conversations create unification, connection, satisfaction, and intimacy. In preparing your marriage for the inevitable stress of the holidays, you're going to increase your satisfaction, understanding, intimacy, unity, and success of moving through the holidays together. If you need to discuss previous Christmases, or other holidays, I suppose, just like we have, sometimes you will know if you need to start to talk about a previous holiday, if it still seems unresolved to you, if it still kind of creates a tension in you, or you have lingering hurts attached to it. If you're experiencing any of those things, then that's usually a pretty clear sign that some extra conversations need to be taking place. And the 20-minute rule, or the daily spark, or whatever you want to call it, the daily spark gives you an opportunity to have those necessary conversations, even if they're not fun, even if they're really hard, even if they're kind of difficult or icky. And then if you're grieving, on an individual level, because of a change in your life, maybe the loss of someone or loss of job, loss of income, loss of capacity for something. But yeah, if you're grieving this holiday season, turning to your marriage for comfort and connection is, that's what it's made for. It's part of the purpose of marriage is to support and serve one another in difficult seasons. So if you are grieving, these 20 minutes of conversation and connection every day can be a little opportunity to talk about it if you would like to. You don't want to leave your partner alone in their grief, especially during the holiday season. You don't want to leave your partner alone in processing and in hurting. Sometimes we use the analogy of a puddle. You don't want to leave them alone in their puddle. So talking about what's going on, if you can, or if you can't, use the words, because sometimes in grief you just can't. That's okay. Maybe just minister to one another by being present. Communicating with our bodies that we are connected, that we are, being close. Nobody in their right mind ever turned down a back rub. So if you're grieving, don't be afraid to ask for some of those things and to seek solace and connection in your marriage. It takes setting aside those 20 minutes every day to give ourselves the opportunity to have those kinds of conversations. And when you have a pattern, when you have a system, a sustainable one, of course, set up in your marriage for having 20 minutes to discuss and talk through things with your spouse, then these conversations have the time and the room that they need. If you don't have that system, then you could be leaving them behind. You could be leaving them lonely, leaving them hurt, leaving them in a puddle. Or, on the other end, you could also be missing out on celebration and things that are going on that are great. So set aside the time and start going over maybe some of these holiday ideas or the upcoming, those anticipatory feelings, those hurts, those wounds that you might be carrying. Take that opportunity and take this as an opportunity for a reminder to engage with your spouse about the holidays and pre-game and during game and post-game. If you do, you can almost guarantee that your holidays will be more enjoyable and that your marriage will feel more like sitting by the fire than, going to grab something in the basement freezer, which is cold in Minnesota. I suppose if your basement isn't in Minnesota, then the freezer's probably not that cold. Well, maybe the freezer is, but the basement isn't. Anyways, that's the idea. The garage. Nope, still doesn't work. Anyways, if you want to reach out to us or have any questions or comments or concerns, feel free to reach out via voicemail. Feel free to send us an email at marriageisthebest@yahoo.com. Feel free to share the episode and feel free to rate it if you want to rate it really highly. That would be awesome. Let other people know that their marriage is worth it. Let other people know that having these conversations is so important and that especially around stressful times like the holidays, it's all the more important to lean in on your most important relationship, which is your marriage. So, thanks everybody and have a good one. Bye.
And I got all I need.